Hello everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic Wrestling back once again, and it's time to talk about everything that happened at AEW All Out 2024. Let's go. The first match of the pre-show is the Acclaimed versus the Iron Savages. The Savages' friend, Jack Jameson, cuts a promo on the way to the ring and says the only reason this show is 0 hour instead of Trios hour is because Billy Gunn is too scared to face him and make it a 6-man. The Babyfaces are in control early on. Caster just about gets one of the Iron Savages over with a head scissors, but the heels take control of the match shortly afterwards. At this point, we cut backstage and we see Mason Mansoor watching on at the best angle I've ever seen. Boulder hits a big moonsault for 2, but then Bronson misses a diving headbutt badly, and this allows Max Caster to get the hot tag to Anthony Bowens. But then Boulder impressively catches both Acclaim members and slams them at the same time, but still the heels can't put the babyfaces away. The Savages miss a big double cannonball in the corner, and then Jack Jameson tries to get involved, but Daddy Ass drops him with a big right hand. Caster hits the Death Valley driver and the mic drop, and the Acclaimed get the win. Worth mentioning though that Bronson looks in a bit of trouble after the bell, grabbing his knee, and I'm not sure if Caster realizes this because he kicks him out of the ring, like off the apron while he's recovering, and then I think we see the referee and one of the crew members checking on Bronson afterwards, so hopefully he's okay. The second pre-show match is a trios match with Dustin Rhodes, Sammy Guevara, and Hologram taking on the Premier Athletes. Sammy gets isolated early on and beaten down in the heel corner, but does eventually get the tag to Hologram, who kind of flips off the shoulders of Tony Nese, but doesn't quite land it clean. However, he still manages to take out all the heels and gets a nice near fall off a nice Spanish fly. Woods catches him though with a big knee in midair, and the heels retake control. Then the referee gets distracted as Smart Mark Sterling gets some cheap shots in on the outside of the ring. We then unfortunately get another bit of a sloppy exchange between Hologram and Woods in the corner, but they get it back together again and Hologram hits a nice head scissors. Dustin finally gets the hot tag and runs wild, hitting a big Canadian destroyer on Tony Nese. Then Sammy and Hologram hit simultaneous moonsaults to the outside while Dustin sentons off the apron, taking out all the heels in one swift blow. Dustin goes for the crossroads, but Sterling distracts him from the apron and the match all breaks down, but Dustin does eventually hit the crossroads, and again Sterling gets up on the apron, this time distracting the referee during the pinfall attempt. The babyface team have had enough, and Sammy and Hologram drag Sterling into the ring where Dustin hits a crossroads on him as well. Then everybody hits their big moves on Woods, and the faces get the win. The third match on the pre-show is another trios match, the Bang Bang Gang versus the Dark Order. The babyfaces are in control early on and clear the ring, putting their guns up in the middle of the squared circle. However, the Dark Order take control and isolate Juice Robinson for a near fall or two, but he gradually fights back and causes a series of miscommunications before cannonballing onto all 3 opponents in the corner. Austin Gunn gets the hot tag and runs wild for a little bit, but ends up in trouble himself and has to get the hot tag to his brother Colton, who also runs wild. Lots of running wild in this one. Uno gets taken out with a full Nelson slam, and Juice Robinson gets the big tag. Then everybody gets laid out and they're all down in the ring before Reynolds and Colton leap off of 2 teammates' backs and collide with each other with a mid-air double clothesline kind of thing. Juice ends up alone with Evil Uno, both of the legal men, and Juice takes control. He fakes Uno out with a right hand before hitting the Juice's Loose, his finisher DDT kind of thing, to get the win. Guns up. Next up, we get a non-wrestling segment as Tony Schiavone brings Sky Blue out onto the stage, who of course is currently sidelined with injury. She hypes up her hometown crowd in Chicago and seems genuinely quite emotional to be there. Tony asks how long until Sky is back in action, and she says, unfortunately, it's just a waiting game, but she is interrupted mid-sentence by Mariah May. Boo! Mariah says she came here to have her title celebration, but she's not going to do it in Chicago. Ew. Why do they call it the Windy City, she says, when nobody here has ever been blown before. Sky Blue says, you certainly know a thing or two about that. And then Mariah says it makes sense that Sky's from Chicago because she's broke and filthy. And people lower their standards to, like, be with her or live in Chicago. I didn't really understand. A lot of jibes exchanged here. Mariah closes by saying Chicago needs some glamour, and then suddenly attacks Sky's leg and beats her down before preparing to hit her with one of her crutches. However, Queen Aminata saves the day and chases Mariah away. Aminata helps Sky to her feet, and yeah, that's the segment. I'm glad Aminata is involved here in AEW because she, I think, has been a really underrated part of Ring of Honor this year. And the final match of the pre-show, more trios action, but this time with 3 teams in the mix. Top Flight and Action Andretti taking on Shane Taylor Promotions and the Beast Mortos, taking on the Undisputed Kingdom. The match begins with Mike Bennett not wanting to start from the apron, but he gets sucker punched by Shane Taylor and the bell rings. Shane Taylor Promotions isolate Andretti in their corner, but he eventually gets the tag to Darius Martin, who takes control of the match, but then Roddy Strong blind tags his way in and ends up getting just trucked over by Mortos, who then throws him into his 2 teammates just for good measure. A massive pop-up Samoan drop takes out Roddy, and Mortos is firmly in control until Dante Martin flies in and powers Mortos up in the air for a very impressive airplane spin. The Undisputed Kingdom retake control and work Dante over for a while until Shane Taylor blind tags in, and now the other heel team work Dante over for a while. However, Darius gets the hot tag from his brother, and now it all breaks down. The babyfaces want to go for some crowd-popping dives to the outside, but they are cut off by various heels, who then do some dives of their own. Taven flies to the outside and then screams, "I am Matt Taven," into the camera, and then Mortos with a very nice dive through the middle ropes with a twist in there as well. Very impressive agility from a big boy. Mortos then sets his sight on Top Flight's manager, Layla Gray, who is here, of course, accompanying her team, but the babyfaces save the day before he can get to her with nice simultaneous dives to the outside, taking out not just Mortos, but all the other heels as well. Back in the ring, Mortos crushes Action Andretti with a spear, but then Roddy Strong sneakily blind tags his way in and adds a knee to Mortos' big shoulder breaker, and then steals the pinfall on Andretti himself from under Mortos' nose to pick up the win for the Undisputed Kingdom. As the heels celebrate, Roddy shouts, "You see that hook?" which could indicate an FTW title shot in Roddy's near future. The opening match of the main show is MJF versus Daniel Garcia, and it starts off fast as Garcia jumps MJF during his entrance. The bell rings and both men beat each other down in the corner. Garcia wants a piledriver straight away, but MJF runs the back of Garcia's neck into the corner of the ring. Garcia continues to sell the neck a lot as MJF works it over before hitting a really nasty lifting DDT for a near fall. He then goes for the brainbuster, but Garcia gets out and they both take a terrifying spill over the top rope to the outside. The referee counts to 9 and Daniel only just beats the count back inside. Garcia fights back with a series of rolling neck breakers and wants a piledriver again, but MJF backdrops his way out. He then gets a near fall with a hard shoulder breaker type maneuver, but with the neck landing on his knee instead of the shoulder. MJF bites Garcia's head to bust him open and goes for the middle rope tombstone that he originally injured Garcia with, but Garcia kicks his way free and tears at MJF's face before hitting a top rope DDT for a near fall as MJF just gets a boot on the bottom rope. MJF hits Panama Sunrise, but Garcia kicks out at 2. MJF then cockily kicks away at a downed Garcia, who starts to fire up. MJF spits at him very unwisely, and Garcia starts to lay in the right hands, but MJF hits a thumb to the eye. He goes again for the brainbuster, but Garcia rolls him up for 2, and they exchange near falls until MJF clocks Garcia with a massive right hand. The babyface avoids another brainbuster and fights up from a German suplex to drop MJF with a German suplex of his own, and both men are down. Once they're back to their feet, Garcia again looks for the piledriver, but MJF reverses it into a Boston Crab, which is countered into a label lock, which is countered into a crossface from MJF. But MJF has to break his own submission because his neck's hurting, and he grabs his neck, allowing Garcia to spring to his feet and apply the sharpshooter. He leans way back in it, but that allows MJF to grab his arm and transition into the salt of the earth. MJF then turns this into kind of a Zack Sabre Jr.-esque submission, tying up several limbs at once, but Garcia stretches out his one free leg and just makes the ropes. MJF wants another Panama Sunrise, but Garcia collapses backwards out of range, so MJF bends down after him, but it's a trick, and Garcia bridges over for a very near fall. Garcia locks in the guillotine, and MJF is fading. The referee tries to drop MJF's arm, which would of course end the match, but Garcia stops it himself because he wants to go for the piledriver. Could this be an error? No, as it turns out, as he nails a really scary jumping piledriver in the middle of the ring. But actually, yes, it is a mistake because shockingly, in my opinion, MJF kicks out. I really thought that was the finish. Garcia drags MJF over to the corner and looks for the middle rope piledriver, but MJF gets free with another bite and shoves Garcia away. When Garcia comes back over to MJF, the heel pulls the referee in the way and low blows Daniel before getting a sneaky jackknife pinfall for the win. Boo! MJF offers a handshake after the bell and the crowd are like, no, don't do it. But Garcia does accept the handshake and predictably MJF goes for the low blow. Maybe too predictably though, as Garcia is ready for it, catches the foot and hits a low blow of his own. Garcia then takes MJF back to the corner, spits in his face, and hits him with that middle rope pile driver. MJF is done for. Garcia gives him a mocking kiss and leaves through the crowd as commentary debate whether or not MJF deserved it and kind of go, yeah, maybe. The tag team title match is next with the Young Bucks defending against Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta. Wheeler starts off getting the better of Nicholas Jackson and brings in Claudio, but Jackson takes out both with his step-up double head scissors thing, only for the faces to pop up behind him as he poses, and they take him down again. Matthew tags in and doesn't fare much better as the challengers remain in control. In fact, we get various wishbones to Matthew, with the faces tagging in and out to hit wishbone after wishbone after wishbone. Nicholas tries to stop it, of course, and falls victim to a wishbone as well. He bails to the outside and kicks the barricade in frustration before selling the foot. Excellent heel work. The champions take control and isolate Wheeler in their corner for a while, but he eventually forces a miscommunication between the Bucks and gets the tag to Claudio. Castagnoli runs wild with uppercuts and does the same on the outside, charging around the ring like a Swiss Braun Strowman or something. Wheeler gets a near fall inside the ring with the seatbelt pin, but Claudio spills over the crowd barricade on the outside meanwhile, leaving Yuta isolated. He takes a super kick, but hits one himself to Nicholas before getting a bridging German on Matthew, but again it's only a near fall. Yuta locks in the cattle mutilation, but Nicholas breaks it up with a swanton from the top. The Bucks then take control again and go for more bang for your buck on Wheeler, but Claudio helps break it up and Wheeler rolls up Matthew, but again it's only a near fall. Claudio tags back in but falls victim to the EVP trigger, only for Wheeler to dive in and break up the fall. The champions then blast Claudio with a double super kick. They go for the EVP trigger again, but Claudio catches it and hits a double vertical suplex. Claudio then gets the big swing on Matthew, loads of rotations, but the pinfall attempt again only gets 2. Matthew ends up on the top with Yuta, but Claudio pops up with a jumping uppercut and then hits a big superplex on Matthew, followed by an assisted splash from Wheeler, but Matthew gets the knees up and Nicholas grabs Claudio as Matthew rolls up Wheeler to retain the belts. It's a sneaky old finish and the Bucks are still champions. Next up, the International Championship match with the champion Will Ospreay defending against Pac. Ospreay fires up the crowd to start, so Pac heelishly bails to the outside. The match begins properly and both men flip out of each other's attempts to take the other one off their feet until Pac throws Ospreay to the outside and hits a nice sky twister press, but then later on, Ospreay returns the favor. We see Ricochet watching from backstage as both men take each other down with simultaneous front kicks before sitting up and exchanging hard slaps. Pac takes control for a while and works over the neck of Ospreay before whipping him into the crowd barricade. They head up top and Pac hits an avalanche brainbuster, but takes a while to make the cover so Ospreay can kick out at 2. They end up back on the outside where Ospreay hits a flying forearm from the barricade, getting back in the ring and hitting the Sasuke special to the outside. Back in the ring, Pac avoids the Cheeky Nando's kick with a kick of his own. Then Ospreay very impressively catches Pac off a moonsault, but Pac twists his body and hits a tornado DDT. Very nice exchange there. Pac follows up with a Liger Bomb for 2 and goes for the Black Arrow, but Ospreay rolls out of range, so Pac gets down from the corner instead and hits the ropes only to run into the Spanish Fly for another near fall. Pac catches an Oscutter attempt and wants a tombstone, but Ospreay gets out of it and misses the hidden blade. He then flips out of a German and does get the Oscutter this time, but it only gets 2. Ospreay wins a strike exchange and again goes for the Oscutter, this time on the apron, but Pac catches it and hits a nasty release German on the apron. Oh, Jesus. He follows it up with a Poison Rana on the apron, oh Jesus again, and then locks in the Brutalizer back in the ring, but Ospreay makes the ropes. The Black Arrow gets knees and a roll-up from Ospreay, but Pac kicks out and then avoids another hidden blade, and then after a brutal Hurricane Rana, locks in the Brutalizer again, but Ospreay slowly stands up out of it and hits a Poison Rana of his own, followed by the hidden blade. He collapses on Pac, but the challenger just kicks out in time. Fast and furious action here. I'm out of breath. Pac hits a Poison Rana off the top, but Ospreay somehow lands on his feet and nails another hidden blade. But again, it only gets 2. The champion, though, is fired up now and hits the step-up Oscutter out of the corner, followed by a Stormbreaker, but Pac counters this into a Hurricane Rana for 2. Ospreay rolls out of the pinfall attempt and hits the Styles Clash, followed by a final hidden blade, and that is it for the challenger. Ospreay makes the cover, 1, 2, 3, and he is still the international champion. Ricochet watches on from backstage, and he's all like, yeah, very nice match, but I'm next. He doesn't say that, but I'm trying to read his thoughts. Next up, the Chicago street fight between Willow Nightingale and Kris Statlander. Oh my, this one was, yeah. Stokely slides Statlander a chair to start off, but Willow ducks it and hits the pounce, followed by a buckle bomb and a very hard cannonball in the corner. They head to the apron where Statlander hits a chair shot to the back before dropping down and powerbombing Willow through the Spanish announce table. Stokely helps Statlander set up a table and Willow gets laid on it. Kris heads up top and misses a swanton through the table as Willow rolls off, but Statlander's legs still crash down on Willow's head very nastily indeed. Willow pounces Statlander through the crowd barricade and drags her up to the stage where Kris reverses a vertical suplex attempt into one of her own. Stokely fetches a trash can full of weapons and Statlander tries to suplex Willow onto the trash can and misses it, which actually makes it look more painful. Statlander misses a barbed wire baseball bat shot and Willow counters with light tubes out of nowhere. Where did she even get those? And they bust Kris open. Statlander gets a surge of energy though and spears Willow off the side of the ramp where they both crash through tables below. They get back to the ring where both women fire up out of body slams from the other. Willow then fetches a chain and wraps it around her fist. Statlander slaps her in the face, and Willow obviously lays in some heavy right hands with the chain before biting away at the head wound of her former friend. Statlander scatters some thumbtacks on the canvas, and they fight over who goes through them. It's Statlander who does in the end, missing an axe kick and doing the splits onto the thumbtacks. Ouch. Willow then scoops her up and hits the Death Valley driver into the tacks for good measure, but it only gets 2. They head up top, and Statlander nails a huge Spanish fly before grabbing the chain and hitting a discus lariat with it, but Willow kicks out this time as well. Statlander fetches a longer chain and attaches an end to both of their wrists, so we're kind of getting an impromptu strap match of sorts now, or well, chain match I guess. Willow drags Statlander towards her with the chain into a spinebuster on the tacks, but the match continues and they hit simultaneous lariats and stare at each other before Statlander decides to finish things off, hitting a tombstone and choking out Willow with the chain. The referee waves it off and Kris Statlander has won one hell of a Chicago street fight. Next, we get a backstage segment between Will Ospreay and Ricochet. Will tells Ricochet to hurry up and get some wins. Stop just sitting around collecting a paycheck so we can have our title match. And Ricochet says, oh, don't worry about that. I'll be seeing you soon. The next match is the 4-way match for the Continental Championship. Kazuchika Okada defending against Orange Cassidy, Konosuke Takeshita, and Mark Briscoe. The two Japanese wrestlers clear the ring to start things off, but Orange Cassidy gets in between them and goes to put his hands in his pockets. They stop him, but he hits a double Hurricane Rana on both, followed by a DDT on Okada for the count of 1. Mark Briscoe and Orange Cassidy work together to clear the ring before hitting simultaneous moves to the outside on both other guys. Briscoe then hits his running elbow drop off the apron, and Cassidy hits a very lazy version of his own. The match gets back in the ring, and we get a lot of vertical suplexes hit on each other from everyone else on each other, apart from Orange, who can't quite get his opponents in the air. He finally reverses a Takeshita suplex with Stundog Millionaire, and at last hits a nice vertical suplex of his own. Cassidy and Okada get knocked to the outside, and Briscoe wants a dive, but Takeshita cuts him off and hits a dive of his own. Mark then gets a chair and hits his step-up dive off the chair and, manages to hit a nice one to the outside. But he's been busted open, though, at some point. Possibly, I'm not sure, but possibly when Takeshita cut him off earlier on the dive attempt with a big strike. Mark meets Cassidy back in the ring, and they exchange very gentle chops, but things get more and more intense, and eventually they are trading hard forearms, but the Japanese guys get back in and hit stereo German suplexes. Finally, this leaves us with Okada versus Takeshita, and they have many elbow strikes between the two of them before Okada hits his big drop kick. He looks for the Rainmaker Rainmaker, but Takeshita counters with his nice blue Thunderbomb, but it only gets 2. Takeshita hits a big superplex on Orange Cassidy, but is hit himself with the Froggy Bow from Mark Briscoe, only for Okada to break up the pinfall attempt. He then hits his top rope elbow drop on Briscoe and sets him up for the Rainmaker, but Mark counters it and goes for the J Driller. Okada avoids this, but Mark hits a Rainmaker of his own. Takeshita follows up with a big boot and then Cassidy with the orange punch, and the champion has to roll to the outside. Everyone's been hitting him with their big moves. Takeshita counters Stundog Millionaire into his tombstone/wheelbarrow German combination on Cassidy, but Briscoe gets back involved and hits the J Driller on Takeshita. 1, 2, but Okada pulls Mark out of the ring. Briscoe suplexes Okada on the outside and looks to finish off Takeshita with the Froggy Bow, but the former DDT man avoids it and lays out Mark with a big knee. 1, 2, but now Cassidy breaks up the pinfall. OC hits Beach Break on Takeshita and sets him up for the orange punch, but Takeshita counters it with a massive strike of his own, followed by a lariat and an attempt at Raging Fire, but Okada gets in and stops the move and then hits Mark Briscoe with the Rainmaker. This whole exchange has left us with Okada versus Orange Cassidy. OC rolls up Okada for a very near fall, then goes for the orange punch, but Okada ducks it, nails the Rainmaker, and finally makes the winning pinfall of the match, pinning Orange Cassidy and retaining the Continental Championship. Next up, it is the TBS title match. Mercedes Moné defending against Hikaru Shida with Camille banned from ringside. Can Moné do it without help? Mercedes starts off in control, but Shida fights back with a series of drop kicks before locking in a stretch muffler. But Moné makes the ropes, and Shida continues to work over the leg of the champion. She drapes Moné off the apron and hits a running knee from the floor, but it only gets 2 back in the ring. Both women head up top, and Mercedes hits a sunset bomb before taking control of the match and wearing out the challenger. She hits the double knee drop with Shida across the middle turnbuckle, but that only gets 2 as well. Shida gets out of a chin lock and hits a head scissors followed by a running knee to the spine. She then hits a missile drop kick and gets the 10 punches in the corner, but Moné counters a clothesline into the bank statement, only for the challenger to stretch a leg backwards and make the ropes. They have a strike exchange, which Shida wins with a big knee to the head. Moné, though, later on gets a lung blower and a sunset flip into the corner, followed by the running double knees for a near fall. Moné hits the 3 amigos, but the frog splash gets knees, and Shida then hits 3 falcon arrows, but it only gets 2. Mercedes counters a spinning kick with a dragon screw leg whip, followed by the backstabber, but Shida powers up out of it and hits a German suplex, followed by a running knee for another near fall. Shida then hits like a trio of katana kicks, but only the second one seems to connect properly. I don't really know what happens. Mercedes kicks out weirdly at 1 and rolls out of the ring, not really sure what that was about. Both women grab an end of Shida's kendo stick in the corner of the ring, and the challenger drags Moné shoulder first into the ring post. Back inside, Shida wants to use the kendo stick and really thinks about it, but then remembers, oh, this is literally a title match, I can't win the title. She misses diving knees out of the corner and then avoids one Moné Maker attempt, but Mercedes hits the second one and wins quite abruptly there. The finishing stretch was a little bit disjointed, in my opinion. Camille comes out to celebrate with the champion, and they head to the back while Shida's left in the ring damn it, I blew my chance. Next up, we have Jack Perry taking on Bryan Danielson for the AEW World Championship. Perry gets a Goldberg-esque pre-entrance with the camera following him from the back next to the Bucks, and he's also flanked by a team of private security. Bryan gets the final countdown again, and everyone is obviously very happy to see him. The match begins, and Perry gets a quick arm drag and poses to get heat before winning a little grappling exchange and paintbrushing the head of the champion. But Bryan keeps his composure and then runs into another arm drag, and he isn't so happy this time, and Perry bails to the outside for a little bit of stalling. Danielson works his way into the match and gets a surfboard locked in, plus elbows to the side of the head. He goes to kick Perry's head in, but the challenger again rolls to the outside to avoid it, only to be met with a dropkick through the ropes when he tries to get back in, and then Bryan springs to the top rope and flies with a senton. He tries to follow up by leaping off the apron, but Perry counters with a mid-air super kick and then hits a draping DDT from the apron to the floor. Bryan gets sat in a chair next to the barricade, and Perry charges with a big shotgun dropkick. He throws the champion back inside, but it only gets 2. Perry hits 9 punches in the corner and then taunts the crowd instead of hitting a 10th before hitting a neck breaker, but again it's only a near fall. Bryan gets back on top of the match and rains down elbows in the corner before hitting a very scary high-angle back superplex. He takes Perry to the woodshed for a while with chops and kicks, but Perry gets a drop toe hold and locks in the cattle mutilation, which of course is Bryan's hold. Interesting. Bryan powers out, but then gets hit with a couple of snapdragons. Perry tries for a third on the apron, but Bryan breaks free and they have a strike exchange until Bryan grabs Perry and nails a butterfly suplex down to the floor. Excuse me, I'm just so horrified. Back inside, Bryan lays in more punishment, this time to the arm, while talking trash. He then nails a big head kick and sets up for the running knee, but Perry counters it and locks in the snare trap. Bryan makes it to the ropes, and Perry loses his temper and talks some trash of his own, saying Bryan only cares about himself, and then he nails him with a big lariat. He lifts Bryan up, but the champion rolls him into a near fall. Bryan then hits another kick to the head before charging with the running knee, but Perry pulls the ref in the way. With the official down, here come the Young Bucks to beat down the champion. They hit the TK driver and set up for the EVP trigger, but Claudio and Yuta arrive and chase the Bucks away through the crowd. Back in the ring though, the referee is roused by Perry, who hits a running knee of his own, but the referee is obviously selling and is quite slow to make the count, and Bryan kicks out just in time. Perry kicks Bryan's head in and mocks the yes chance. He goes for a running knee, but it's countered by one from Bryan, and it sends Perry flying, but Danielson is too hurt to make the cover. The pair rise slowly and exchange strikes, and Perry starts to slap Bryan around, but Bryan starts to no-sell the strikes and then slaps Perry back harder. Perry, though, lands on his feet out of a German suplex, but runs into a hell of a Busaiku knee, which is surely the finish, but he kicks out again. Bryan kicks Perry's head in, but the challenger raises himself to his knees defiantly and poses with his arms out, kind of like Raven. Bryan obliges and blasts him with a final knee to retain the title. Danielson celebrates, and here's Killswitch from behind, who takes Bryan out. Perry's all confused, like, what's my old friend Killswitch doing here? Or Luchasaurus, I guess. But of course, that is answered when Christian Cage's music hits, and he's about to cash in the title shot he won at Wembley. The Patriarchy all advance down the ramp, but they find Jon Moxley standing in the way. The rest of the BCC join in, including Pac, and Christian thinks, okay, let's do this another day, and the bad guys all leave. The Blackpool Combat Club get in the ring, and Moxley hugs Bryan, and they all raise his hands, and then Claudio Castagnoli blasts Bryan with a big uppercut. At this point, all hell breaks loose. Wheeler Yuta is held back by Pac, and Yuta is horrified as Moxley whips out a plastic bag and suffocates Bryan with it. Marina Shafir gets in as well, and she leaves with the rest of the group once Bryan is rendered unconscious, and everyone leaves apart from Yuta, who is tearful at this point, and he rushes over to help Bryan with the rest of the medical staff. It looks as though Moxley's new stable has kind of taken shape. And finally, oh god, it's the match we've all been waiting for. The main event, the lights out cage match between Swerve Strickland and Hangman Adam Page. Both men are accompanied by security for their entrances, and Strickland is owning the angle at the end of the Go Home Dynamite with the image of Hangman sat in front of his burning house on the back of his ring jacket. Swerve jumps Hangman before the cage is lowered and tries to hold his head in place to be crushed by the lowering cage. They fight for control and both avoid it in the end as the cage lowers just slowly enough for them to get out of the way. Meanwhile, Prince Nana has slid various things into the ring: a table, some chairs, and a mysterious box as well. Swerve takes control of the match and nails an early house call, but Hangman elbows out of big pressure and hits a German suplex. Hangman goes inside the box and gets out, a staple gun. He staples Swerve, but Swerve laughs off the shots from it and grabs the staple gun himself before stapling Hangman's back. Strickland unflinchingly pulls a few staples out of his own chest without his face moving somehow, and then pulls some pictures of his family from his waistband, stapling them to Hangman's chest and face. Strickland hits a Death Valley driver into the cage wall. They then balance on the top rope, but Hangman drops down and crotches Swerve before ramming him into the cage wall. Page then wraps a section of barbed wire around his arm and hits a jumping lariat. He then attaches the barbed wire to the cage wall and tries to whip Swerve into it, but Swerve bounces off the ropes instead and lariats Hangman, but then his anger gets the better of him and he charges at Page, only to, of course, be sent into the barbed wire face first contest after all. Hangman drags Swerve's head across the barbed wire just to make sure, and then wants the buckshot lariat, but of course, the cage wall is too close, it's stopping him from doing his finisher. Instead, Page grabs a chair and lays in some shots before trying to make the referee bend down for a buckshot lariat over his back. The referee argues about this, which allows Swerve to come back and hit a buckshot of his own over the referee's back, and strictly speaking, he doesn't get all of it. Strickland lays in some heavy chair shots to Hangman's back and then wedges the chair in the corner before launching Page headfirst into it and makes the cover, but it only gets 2. Strickland gets a cinder block out of his box and looks for the pile driver, but Hangman fights out, so Swerve hits a vertebreaker instead, with Page's back landing nastily on the cinder block, and you can see the mark it leaves as well. Hangman though kicks out a 2, so Swerve sets up a table, but Page fights back and they struggle for control in the corner, and then Swerve nails the stomp off the top rope through the table. Again, Page kicks out, so Swerve sets up for a house call, but Hangman counters into the Deadeye for another near fall. Hangman shouts whose house, and then I think reaches down into his jacket in the corner and retrieves a charred shard of debris from Swerve's house. He tries to gouge Strickland with it, but Swerve wrestles it away and tries to do it himself. They fight for control over the spike, and then Swerve finally gets it and drives it repeatedly into Hangman's head. Swerve though then wastes time looking at the wood and feeling sad about his house, I guess, which lets Hangman hit a low blow and scoop Strickland up for a devastating powerbomb down onto the cinder block. Swerve kicks out though, and the match still continues. Strickland powerbombs Hangman into the wall, and he falls down the gap between the ropes and the cage, and then Swerve hits a house call, driving Page's head into the cage wall. Swerve hits what he thinks is a final house call kick, but Hangman kicks out just in time. Swerve heads up for a swerve stomp, then thinks about climbing up further and hitting it from the top of the cage, but Hangman recovers and stops the climb before hitting an avalanche powerbomb all the way from the top rope to the canvas. The Deadeye connects again, but again it's only a near fall. Hangman then grabs a chair and nails Swerve's head repeatedly with the edge of it, telling him to beg for mercy. Swerve though laughs and holds up 2 fingers, saying, I guess I have 2 wins over you. This doesn't amuse Page, who takes the grill out of Strickland's mouth and grabs a syringe, sticking it through the lip of Swerve. Oh god. Page then grabs a chair and breaks it over Strickland's head. The camera kind of cuts as it connects. Hopefully that means the chair was gimmicked in some way, but it definitely still achieves the desired effect. The referee waves it off. Swerve is out cold, and Hangman wins via knockout. Hangman looks like he's about to attack Swerve again as the cage is raised, but medical personnel get in the way, and Hangman heads up the ramp. Then it looks like he's gonna head back down the ramp and attack Swerve again, but once again he thinks better of it and celebrates maniacally on the ramp as the show goes off the air. So there you have it. That was everything that happened at a very eventful AEW All Out 2024. Let me know what you thought of the show, and let me know what you thought of any of the matches and everything in the comments section down below. A big thank you to Luke and Owen on the edit for this video, and thank you very much for watching once again. I've been Jack from Cultaholic Wrestling. That was AEW All Out, and I'll see you very soon.